Alright, welcome everybody to another week of Game Wisdom Live. This is for the week of September 22nd, 2019. Only a few months left in the year. And as always, I am Josh Beiser, and we have yet another interesting discussion planned for today. Joining me again is indie game developer Shark. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We're getting some things done. It's slow, but getting some things done on Project Red, and that's good.
Yeah. For me, this coming week, I have a Skype interview with a library about doing presentations virtually, so very excited about that. And right now, I'm switching between California and Texas in terms of my calls, trying to hit like two of the bigger states there. So it's going to be.
Question is when do you have it scheduled before you actually cover the entire U.S. of libraries?
I don't know. I think it's sometime in 2020 at this rate, and then the world after that. But very excited about the second book. I believe has a date of October 9th. Still waiting to hear more from the publisher. I think at some point I definitely need to look into getting a literary agent just to handle all this stuff for me. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to be at a local book fair. That will be on the 5th, where I'm going to be setting up, selling the book, and hopefully making more contacts.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. The only problem is I have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning to get there by 7:30, and I'll be there until around 4. So chances are my sleep cycle is either going to get fixed by this, or it's going to get broken even more when this is all done.
Yeah, you might have to try to fix your sleep schedule before that happens.
Mm-hmm. Fix it and then it gets broken again after the thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, very interesting time. At some point, we have to have our, top games of the year. That always fun section on the stream.
Oh yeah.
I've already forgotten most of the games, that have came out this year. Usually I'm like behind, so at some point, I'm playing games from 2018 and, oh, this is a great game for this year. And that's happened a few times, like on my best of lists.
That-
Are you still there?
yeah.
I thought I caught it. Lost you there. But let's get to some general topics or some general news, and then we'll talk about our first main one. So I guess for you, Shark, have you had a chance to play any new games this week?
Um. Yeah, I played a little bit of Mythgard. Um. And I didn't get past the tutorial per se in it, but it seems pretty interesting. It's very similar to Magic,
Mm-hmm.
but with I don't know, like a hair of Hearthstone in there,
Hmm.
in the way that it doesn't actually give you mana or anything.
Hmm.
You just draw cards, and then you can pick one card per turn to sacrifice,
Hmm.
and then that card gets shuffled back into your deck. And based on the color of the card that you sacrifice, you get that color of mana.
Okay. So it's basically sacrifice a card to play a card, then.
Well, sacrifice a card to get mana.
Okay, and then that plays the card.
Right.
Hmm. Interesting.
And then they have like modifiers on the field, like locations.
Hmm.
And basically, I think there's like something like 7, 8, 10 slots, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
you can play a location underneath a unit, and that location may give any unit that plays on that spot a
Hmm.
+1/+1, or it could,
Hmm.
make it where as long as you have a unit in this position, you'll draw a card every turn.
Okay.
And when your units attack, they can only attack the three opponent squares in front of it.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
rather different.
It sounds a lot more involved too.
Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it last night, Sharp, but when we did the grab bag, I played for Feria, and like that was one of those games that it came out during that like awkward period when everybody was trying to be the next Hearthstone, and I don't know, it just was not hooking me from a basic gameplay point of view.
Yeah, I didn't get to see it sadly, but I was looking at the store page and like the money they're asking for the game. It's like,
Is Mythgard is free to play, right?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was thinking about maybe trying to reach out to them to get them on for a cast too. Because yeah, like again, like CCG design is definitely one of the more fascinating topics. We had on one of the designers of, oh no, can't remember the name of it. It was the kind of like a tactical strategy meets CCG. It was like all pixel graphics.
Oh, I think I know the game you're talking about.
Yeah, can't remember the name of it though.
It's slipping my mind too right now. I know of a CCG, developer that you could happen to get on.
Mm-hmm. Who is it? Is it somebody new or somebody we're all well acquainted with?
I don't know. I just get a feeling that they might be here listening to this as we speak,
Like a ghost. They're with us in spirit right now.
like a ghost shark.
There you go. I'm pretty sure that's a sci-fi movie too.
Is it?
I think so. I think they've done every variant of shark possible. Squid shark, ghost shark, zombie shark, cyber shark. I don't know. I think they've hit every. But I think they've cornered the market. But yeah, it sounds very fascinating about Mythgard. Still, and I know Gwent announced that there's going to be an expansion. I think it's going to be their second one for the game. And I also wasn't. I completely forgot like they were still, making stuff for it. Because it after that update, it just kind of like all discussion died around it.
Huh.
Did you ever get a chance to play Gwent Shark?
No, I did not.
Because
Another thing about the Mythgard
mm-hmm.
is that they have cutscenes between battles in when you first started off. I think it's the tutorial or story mode or something, and it's very much comic booky, and it does have to a point cyberpunk kind of style. It's more like old gods kind of thing, and like the gods are basically dead, and then you get like a pet dog that is also kind of a demon kind of thing.
Of course.
Looks like a little cute puppy.
All right. And I guess for me, the game that I've been playing a lot is, of course, Monster Hunter, because you have to play a lot to make any reasonable sense of progress in it. So I'm trying to rush through the main game so I can show off all the fancy end game, the real Dark Souls experience. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I've also been playing Cat Quest 2. It is the ARPG light sequel to the first game that, surprisingly, I enjoyed that one. It was designing around mobile first, but it had like a really solid basic gameplay loop and a disturbing story as well. Like, it's all cute, cuddly cats working together, but then there's a subplot about that this may take place in the post-apocalypse after all humanity has been wiped out. It's like, yay, cheeriness, and everybody's dead. But in the second game, you can play as a cat-dog team. So cats and dogs are working together there.
Have you seen the game Mune Base?
What game?
Mune Base.
Mune Base? No.
Yeah. I got it on my wish list. I haven't ever tried it out. It's a game where you play as a cat as well, and you're like land on the moon or something.
Oh.
And it's kind of like a survival crafting game.
Again, a lot of games out there have cats in there. See Mojo? See Mojo found the Ghost Shark trailer apparently. Okay, yeah, and here's our bet now. How many cat-related games are we going to find when we do the weird game segment later?
I don't know. I'm betting more Cyberpunk because I'm betting Cyberpunk. I bet you anything, Cyberpunk is going to become the next zombies.
After
Space game.
PUBG, I
Type thing.
guess. Yeah. Let's see anything else. Oh, and tomorrow night we'll be starting the Surge 2. I played about 30 minutes of it just to get acquainted with it the other night, and it's basically the Surge. So expect lots of deaths and probably rage when we do that Monday night.
Hmm.
But I think with that, let's get to our first topic because I think this could either be a very long one or a very short one. We'll see how it goes. But for those of you who missed the news, there's been another wrinkle thrown in the debate about being able to sell or resell digital keys. And this has came out of a France ruling, and I can feel myself about to sneeze. Just give you guys a heads up there. Don't want a jump scare. But what has happened is that a French court has determined that Steam must allow its users to resell their keys. And this is definitely a hot button issue and a big one when it comes to not only preserving video games, but also just the state of the digital market. As everybody is well aware of, a key distinction between digital and physical copies is that physical copies are a known quantity. If a studio publishes or prints 100,000 copies, that's it. That's 100,000 copies of that game. This has been a major part about the whole used game market, classic games, the whole idea of, older NES games selling for double or triple their value because there aren't any more copies being made. But when it comes to digital, it is just a matter of asking Steam or the store, or even I think some places, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Char, that some places allow you just print keys without having to ask anyone. Is that right?
Steam used to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm unsure about other places because I don't have
Mm-hmm.
any knowledge in that because we've only released on Steam. But I would assume that you could probably do something like that on itch.io.
Yeah. And again, the fact that there is no manufacturing fee, we don't have to worry about shipping digital keys anywhere, has been one of the major points about the rise of the digital market. Again, for all of us old folks who remember a time before Steam, I guess that's the dark ages these days. That we had to go to the store and buy our physical copies and stand in lines and all that crazy stuff. With horse and buggy carriages and those giant butter churners we had to use. But digital sales ultimately have been a net positive for the industry. The indie market could not have existed without being able to sell keys like that or being able to distribute them. Because again, how many stores like Target or Walmart wanted games like The Binding of Isaac in them originally? Which the ironic twist is that they're now at Target and Walmart on the Switch.
Yep.
But the the point that we've been building up to is that one of the major downsides and one of the more contentious points around digital keys have been the fact that they are tied to account that you're technically not owning these games. You are quote unquote owning the license to play said game, ergo it's not your copy. So the store collapses or your account gets banned or anything else happens, you don't really have a leg to stand on. And this was one of the big points about key reselling, is that with a physical good, it is your own. You own that copy of the game. And I forget the term. I think it's the first sale doctrine, first purchase, something like that, which means that the owner of the original property can only earn money off of that first sale. This is why when you sell something on Amazon that's used, the person that you bought from doesn't get any proceeds of that. But with this recent ruling, it is set to do a lot in terms of what it means to own, buy, and sell digital keys. And we already got people citing doom and gloom in the coming future. So I guess for the audience, what do you think about this? And I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Shark. What are your thoughts?
Well, I see this. If this goes through, this is going to cause a lot of chaos in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I mean, this doesn't really affect like free to play games or
Mm-hmm.
subscription model games or anything like this. This only, you know, refers to basically games that you paid 15, 20, $60 for,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you paid for it. And the issue is that if you and went through your library and you got rid of, you know, 70, 80% of your keys that you have right now, you got what, 1,000 or so, don't you?
Oh yeah.
So if you got rid of 950 of them that you don't think you would ever play again, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody else did the same thing, anybody with those old games will never sell another copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
FTO will never sell another copy. Stardew Valley will never sell another copy. They'll just be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know, while FTL and Stardew Valley made a lot of money, and I mean, that would definitely cut hard into their money. It just wouldn't kill them.
Mm-hmm.
But other games that barely scrape by, that would absolutely kill them. They would be out of work.
Mm-hmm.
They would be out of work, and it would be really bad.
Yeah.
There are, however, ways to go around it.
Yeah. Trying to think of a few quickly off the top of my head. As you said, defining games as games as a service or live service where you are signing, or you said free to play, would certainly be a way. So you have to download the game for free, but to access everything, you need to pay a $15, I don't know, account fee or something like that. It reminds me a lot of what EA was trying to do a few years ago with Project $10, which was you can buy your game used. We don't have any problem with that. But if you want to access like a major function of the game, you have to give us a $10 fee to kind of turn that on if it's a used copy.
Yeah, I mean, they could always you could always do like a double key system, like what basically like what they did with a lot of online games
Mm-hmm.
in physical products. You bought the physical product, but then you had to, which was basically your first key, and then your second key was after you bought it, and then you had to pay your second like you
Mm-hmm.
subscription fee or whatever to the
Yeah.
uh, thing, and it was just a one-time fee, I believe, but it was basically a second key, and that's how they got around used sales.
Yep.
So basically, everybody would have to buy a key twice, essentially.
Yep. And again, as we've said with all these topics, if you give people a way to circumvent the system, they will find that way. Like if there's any little loophole, they're going to do that. Now, I think one issue about this I don't think has been discussed is a very much of the fact that digital keys have been heavily like discounted, undervalued for the last decade. I mean, how many of us have bought 5, 10 games off of Humble Bundle for a penny or $1 or things like that? So there are a ton of copies of games out there. And again, like for like as you said, Shark, for games like Stardew Valley, Factorio, any one of the big name indie games who've survived and did really well from the offset, this really doesn't apply to them.
Well,
But
it's definitely going to hurt their money. It's
but
just they're not going to really hurt them necessarily because they have plenty of money already.
yeah. But for a lot of the smaller developers out there, and as we all know, a very big problem when it comes to digital sales or digital keys has been, keys being illegally stolen or obtained. We mentioned this, I think, on the stream either this past week or last week about how many people will, try and con developers and PR people for keys. I'm a big famous YouTuber. Give me 20 keys and I'll cover your game and I'll have a big old giveaway contest. And then you'll find those keys on G2A or some other site.
Hmm. Or or they'll buy, or somebody will steal a credit card and they'll
Mm-hmm.
commit credit card fraud and just buy a bunch of keys
Yep.
and redistribute them. The
And
issue is while every part of that except for the stealing a credit card is legal,
mm-hmm,
the problem is now this is like expanding it into the people who do it's expanding the same kind of trouble,
mm-hmm,
but into literally everybody to be legal
yep.
in every way.
And like getting back to the smaller developers out there, again, like if you go to a digital store and you see, new copy $20, but so and so selling it for $10, how many
Or
people?
19.
Oh yeah, 19.95 instead of
Yeah,
20. Then how many people are going to go for the cheaper option?
everybody pretty much.
Yep. And,
Everybody that that everybody except for the few that knows that
mm-hmm,
saving that 5 cents is just going to screw the developer.
yep. And again, this was the big point about GameStop or EB Games or whatever you want to call them for the last 20, 30 years. Probably even more than that at this point. That they made their empire on used game sales. And one of the reasons why they're doing so badly now and talks about going bankrupt is the fact that we're in a digital world.
Mm-hmm.
And hi, Ken. Yeah. And again, like the ruling, I was reading the piece on Gama Sutra, it doesn't really go into detail about what this will entail. Like, is this a case of I can just take my key, go to Amazon, and put it up there? Like, what is the exact, policy or procedure in place for this?
From what it sounds like, you can do whatever you want with it.
Hmm.
You can take it and sell it on Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
Newegg, wherever you can put it, wherever somebody will let you put it.
Yeah.
And since Ken is now here, I will tell you the idea that he put forth to just basically make all this null and void up to a point.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be less customer friendly, but it'll end this 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just make all your games free, and then when you download it,
Mm-hmm.
there's a subscription fee for whatever you were going to sell the game for, and it's a 99-year subscription. So
Yeah.
it's a $15 for a 99-year subscription to your game.
Mm-hmm. But what happens if we all live, or we figure out to live for 300 years? What will happen in 99 years then? We'll have to buy
And
it
better
again?
hope they still sell the games.
Or that the meteor hasn't come and crashed into Valve's headquarters?
Hmm.
Yeah. And like,
And what happens to game preservation at that point too?
oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And like again, like we've been talking about this for a while when it comes to being able to preserve these games and the fact that there really aren't hard copies for a lot of these games. And now with the keys being just completely transferable, or if this will officially go through, it's going to make it a lot harder for developers to keep their games or want to keep their games available like that. And you mentioned this point a few minutes ago, Han. But you mentioned, of course, about single player games. Titles that aren't designed around long term replayability. Again, something like Control that just came out this past month, or Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening that we're going to try and get to play through. Like, these are titles that you play them, and for the average consumer, that's it. It's not exactly a game that you're going to come back and play every week or every day or even every year. So, what are they going to do? They're going to resell that key. And as you said, if publishers see that, we're losing out on money because people keep refunding their single player games, they're going to do something about that.
Well, they a lot of them have already said that single player games are dead. This would just be the reality of what they said becoming kind of true at that point,
Mm-hmm.
because single player games would basically die after this, not unless you did that like workaround, like with a subscription or you know some other kind of workaround, because
Mm-hmm.
there if you can just play a single player game, put I mean, like I put like 100 hours or whatever into like a RPG like Final Fantasy or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then I play it and I put the 100 hours in. I mean, I could take that and sell it. You know, I got more than my money's worth out of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I just take it and sell it, and they take it and sell it. They take it and sell it, and you just have this endless cascade of
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And the you say, but maybe that's like physical. I mean, physical games you just take them and resell them and resell them.
Mm-hmm.
Not really, because what happens is the first resell, on most cases, just includes a disc. There's no box,
Yep.
there's no manual. You just get a disc, and it might even be scratched up and glitched. At this point, or and you'll probably pay $55 for that at GameStop.
Yep.
But 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, if GameStop would still be open at that point,
Mm-hmm.
it would be $10, $20 at GameStop for just that key, for
Mm-hmm.
just that scratched up CD.
Yep.
At the other hand, you could go on eBay, find a boxed copy in mint condition, never opened,
Mm-hmm.
and that thing is probably like $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah, I think I saw one was at a trade show or a game show last summer. They were selling like old NES games for like $70, $80. So I think I saw Jaws there for like $50. I'm like, I am not spending that amount of money.
Yeah, and the
Oh.
other issue is a lot of those physical copies just don't exist anymore because
Yep.
they got broke, scratched
Nobody
to
wanted to
infinity.
keep them.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that is, I won't get to Deathly Rage's statement there in a second there, but that is the flip side about, or one of the major points about digital keys. They don't lose their value. A digital key from 2007 or 2008 still works just the same as it does in 2018, 2028. As long as the store is available, you can use that key. And as long as, again, like previously, nobody else used it before you. And again, this is why there's always been that tough point about, digital versus physical. As you said, Shark, when it comes to a physical copy, not only that, but there is a set number of them. Like if the game sold again 100,000 copies, and let's say there's 20,000 on the used game market, then that's it. But when it comes to digital, and especially with people being able to buy keys, as we said earlier, in not so legal ways, you can have many more times of those keys all around, and people can sell them for whatever amount of money they want.
yeah. And Ken made a point that digital keys loses their value if the game becomes cheaper. But if you can resell your keys for whatever price you
Mm-hmm.
want to sell it, then the consumers make the game itself lose value.
Yeah, because you can have the developer say my game is worth $30, but if everybody's selling their keys for $15, then what are you going to do?
Or five.
Or 99
Somebody could,
cents.
yeah, somebody could just steal a credit card, get a whole bunch of them, or pretend to be a creator and get a whole bunch of them
Mm-hmm.
and everything, and then just sell a whole mess load of them for 99 cents, thousands of them,
Yeah.
and their game value is nothing after that.
Oh yeah. And to Deadly Raiders' point, single player with online DRM. I can just see gaming YouTube frothing at the mouth, thinking about when they make their videos on that topic.
Yeah, and also I don't think that would work because
Mm-hmm.
they you could still resell it.
Yeah.
I don't know how the DRM would sell it. I mean, you would. The only way I could see that would work is if you made a count system within it. In which case, I mean, it might as well be just free, and then they have to pay for their account
Yeah.
on a single player game. And that goes back to basically Ken's point about doing a subscription. You know, you get download the game for free, the single player game, and then you get it downloaded, and then you have to pay a
Mm-hmm.
$15, $20, whatever fee for a 99 year old subscription.
Or again, do like the Project $10 thing. Oh, you can get the game used, and you can play, let's say, against the AI. But if you want the whole competitive, season play, the main reason you're playing this game, you gotta give us $15 or $10 or whatever the price of the game may be.
Yeah, but that doesn't work for single player games.
Yep. And that, again, is just a very big problem. And one thing that we didn't touch on, again, is very much of the fact that when we talk about games like this, there is a limit as to just how well any game will sell. Eventually, you're going to run out of consumers to buy your game. That's just how it works. You know, even something like Minecraft, at this point, I think everybody in the world who's going to buy Minecraft probably has done it already. But when we're talking about these smaller indie games, if you only have a market of, let's say, I don't know, 50,000 people for your game, and people are buying used copies, you don't have a huge number, you don't have a huge consumer pool to basically overstep or compensate for that. Like we said earlier, like while major games like FTL, Stardew Valley, Five Nights at Freddy's, they're going to feel a hit. They've already kind of earned enough money to weather that storm.
Yeah, and with indies now, new indies,
Mm-hmm.
basically a large percentage of them dying right out the gate, like my company,
Mm-hmm.
and with all that happening, I mean, this would just make that problem exacerbate by many times.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, I would say if I had to guess, I would say 99.9% of new indies
Yeah.
fail. Even if they do everything right, they fail.
Yeah. And I just
But
thought of something like really bad. Like here's the my major cynic in me just came up with this. You know how there's a lot of people out there who like to target any developers who they don't like or developers who say something they don't like. You could
mm,
have people say, you know what? I'm gonna, figure out how to buy your game, like 100, 500, 1,000 copies of your game, and I'm gonna sell them at a penny and just drive you out of the market like that.
yeah, they could just steal somebody's credit card,
Yeah.
buy 1,000 copies or whatever, and then sell them all for whatever the minimum they can sell it for.
Yeah. And again, how many consumers are going to know the difference? How many of them even understand the difference? Yeah. And yep, that's another point there. Definitely, you could theoretically kill somebody's game like that.
Mm,
And like we've said, a game's price can always go down. It can never go back up.
yep. And the issue is that this is going to
Mm-hmm.
cause just developers to not want to do anything to devalue their game after this point. That would basically essentially end all Steam sales, essentially.
Yeah. And again, like consumers, they want to have it all ways, but you can't really do this and still have this industry thrive.
Yeah, and the issue is I don't see this as a consumer friendly move, even at that, because the fact is yeah, I mean the consumers will be able to resell their games and get more money,
Mm-hmm.
but when they kill the developers that make their favorite games and then they're unable to get their favorite games anymore,
Mm-hmm.
I don't find that being consumer friendly.
Nope.
That's anti-consumer in my opinion.
But there will be a lot of people who will love this idea and they don't really care. Or they, again, a lot of people don't really understand how game development works, unfortunately.
Oh, they'll care. It'll just be too late when they care.
Mm-hmm. And again, I wasn't joking about the gaming YouTube. Like they're going to, like, the first developer who tries to do something to circumvent this, they are going to have an all day hissy fit over that.
Mm-hmm. You make your game free, and then you make it that when you download it, you have to pay a $15 subscription fee for the next 99 years. They're going to have a hissy fit about that.
Oh yeah.
They're going to say this is false advertising. This game wasn't free. This ain't a free to play game.
I can already see the usual suspects right now in my head making videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another thing that from this piece that was reported that I didn't see anything about this again is like how do you exactly price this? Like as we said, like it just sounds like I can price this game whatever I want. If I want to sell this key a $20 game for $19.95, a penny, $75, I can do that. And
Mm-hmm.
like again, like this is one of those issues, and I think Kin said this earlier about the old trying to mess with the new, or something along those lines. Like in the when we talk about physical goods, that kind of model works because again we're dealing with a known quantity of it. So if I want to sell my copy of I don't know I have the comic book The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck for instance. If I want to sell my copy for $10,000, I could do that. Does that mean anyone's going to buy it? Probably not. If my copy is the only copy that's being sold anywhere in the world, somebody could theoretically buy that. Does that mean it's worth $10,000? No. That's just what somebody's willing to pay for it. But when we talk about digital keys, again, there is no known quantity. Like, that would be something very interesting. Like, if developers would go for it saying, you know what, I will only print out 500 copies of my game at a time, and if people want to buy it, past that, you have to wait. But again, that would be, I think, even more asinine.
Yeah. It's just it's all around a mess. It's
Mm-hmm.
because it, no matter what, a digital game would never lose its value. Every copy is that golden copy that's
Yeah.
in mint condition.
Like,
And here's the thing: how would you even sell your key? I
mm-hmm.
mean, I mean, do you have to memorize the key number that you had so that you can, and then go back and just post that somewhere to whoever wants to buy it and tell Steam to authorize them to take it
Mm-hmm.
off your account? I mean,
Yeah. There's still, again, like, this is a lot like when we talked about the whole loot box bill from earlier this year when we spoke about when Rami and I talked about it. That there's a lot of stuff in there that is very vague in terms of how this is all supposed to work. And again, like this is one of those topics where you can't be vague because a lot of people's livelihoods are going to be based on this.
yep. And what I see happening is a lot of developers not even selling their games in France because of this.
Mm-hmm.
If this happens,
Yeah.
Either that or doing some kind of different model in France, like this subscription thing.
Yeah. And I also want to just clarify a point you made a second ago about how the keys don't lose value. I would say the only exception to this would be if the store goes out. But again, we're talking about Steam. Like, the day Steam runs out of money is, we're probably dealing with something far worse happening around the world at that point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, like there's so much that this is going to affect that I don't know. Like I was just like thinking in the back of my head, like what if you could give or some of those purchases would go to the developer, but then again, then that kind of loses the point about being able to sell the keys again and the first sale doctrine, which I'm going to
Yeah.
actually look that up quickly just to make sure that I'm giving the right name.
The other issue is like I was talking about earlier about you having to remember your keys. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in the end, if the the easiest way to do it would be to delete your key and then get a new key to resell that key. But at that point, you're not reselling anything. You're just
Mm-hmm.
deleting yours and getting another one for free.
Yeah.
and that's not reselling. So I mean,
Yeah.
when you're talking about reselling, it's I mean, if this comes to be a thing, I mean, is Valve going to be like, I hope you remember your key number because we're not going to tell you what it is to sell it.
you have to you have to go on an epic quest. You have to go on like an ARG to get your key for each game.
Uh-huh. You have to go back in time and remember what that
Mm-hmm.
exact key number was.
Yeah. And I looked it up, and it is called the first sale doctrine. And just to be all illegal and correct, the first sale doctrine provides that an individual who knowingly purchases a copy of a copyrighted work from the copyright holder receives the right to sell, display, or otherwise dispose of that particular copy, notwithstanding the interests of the copyright owner. So, and again, like this has been a very pivotal point when we talked about the use of digital keys. And again, why many companies have said that you own the license for this game, not a copy. But I guess here's the cynic in me coming back out again. Like, this seems like one of those cases of kind of like Valve not trying to fix a problem, and now that problem is being made worse because of them not really like doing anything about it.
Yeah, I mean that's Valve in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
They don't want to fix anything until it's chaotically broken to the point where they're going to have big issues if they don't address it right now.
Yeah. Exactly. Definitely too. And how about the changes to the game library? Just so happens after the Epic Game Store has been doing more things with it. And
Mm-hmm.
again, like this is like right here in a nutshell is why everybody says competition is good and the problem with monopolies. Because when you're the only game in town, you don't have to do a damn thing if people complain.
Yep. Until it gets so big that that it's going to risk you going
Mm-hmm.
down.
Yep. Or until somebody else tries to come along and beat you like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Although
again,
to be honest, Epic is going about it in a bad way.
oh yeah, but that is a topic for another day, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, like it's going to be very weird. Like again, I guess here's my final point. Like we have about 3 months or 2 months and a few days left of 2019, so we are done. Like this decade has been defined by kind of the rise, fall, and kind of a coasting lane of the independent scene and digital market. So, what was going to happen in 2020 to 2030? And like we've said, a major point about why we're having all these issues and the quote unquote in the apocalypse is that game design has become a lot more open. I mean, this decade alone, how many games have we? I think we've bought, like collectively, more games this decade than we've probably bought in the last 30 years prior to that. And
Because there's thousands upon thousands upon
yep,
thousand times more of them.
yeah, and the ability to sell them has gotten easier. Again, I remember like a lot of the oldies are on right now. I remember a time where if GameStop didn't have a copy of that game, you weren't playing that game. Period. You couldn't go to a store. You couldn't, go online. This was before the age of Amazon, and that game was it. Today, I mean, here's a good case in point. I'm thinking about downloading Link's Awakening tonight and running that on stream. I can go to Nintendo right now, give them my money, and I'll have that game downloaded in probably less than an hour. I can do that even with midnight releases of games. Again, that is a crazy thing that nobody thought was going to be possible 20, 30 years ago. I can sit on my computer and at 12 o'clock midnight start playing a game that is officially released at that very second. And
Yep. No standing in line for hours. No having to
yep,
get ready and go out. No having to socialize. When most
mm-hmm,
of us are inverts and
yay.
introverts and don't want to go out. It just saves all of that.
And then on the other side of things, from the development standpoint, again, like this decade has been a very big point about making game design official. That, you know, is no longer considered this crazy idea to make video games for a living. I mean, hell, look at streaming and YouTube. I mean, imagine telling someone 15, 20 years ago that, you know, in that amount of time, a man who goes by the name Ninja is going to be making millions of dollars playing one game 8 to 12 hours a day. They'll probably look at you like, what's wrong with you? But
Yeah.
the scary thing is that with so many people, exactly, Dudley, I was laughed at too. There was no schools for games when I was growing up. But
I'm sure even Ninja's parents would have laughed at that.
oh yeah. But the point is that with all these people entering the market, there may not be a viable market for them unless they become that lucky, what were we, like a 1% who does make the next Minecraft or the next Stardew Valley, who gets that instant day one coverage and boom before their game gets devalued. And that
I would
is,
say a lot of games are already kind of like that. You already
yeah,
have to get 1%. This is going to be like you have to get the 1% of the 1%.
yeah. And that is, and this is my final point for the topic because I just remembered this. That one of the things that we've been talking about, at least when I have a lot of interviews with developers, is that previously, of course, yep, I don't know any of those games, sadly. That's another good point. But previously, when we talked about quote unquote succeeding in the game industry, there was a good 30 to 45 day period, you know, like that first month to month and a half, that determines whether or not your game is going to succeed. Because that is the time that people are going to buy it. That's before all the reviews have grown or spread. That's before people are selling the game used, and that was how it worked. When we moved to digital originally, that time frame has kind of shrunken down to maybe 15 to 30 days. Now, or with these changes going forward, I mean, what could be like you have 1 week to earn all the money back?
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't even say that's true because like there's oftentimes we give out keys for reviews and everything else before the
Yeah.
game is even out,
And
and then
what
you
if
have like 1 day to make all your money back.
And don't forget, what if all those reviewers do negative reviews of your games? Or they all hate it? Or again, as we said earlier, what if there's a smear campaign against your game?
Yeah,
And that
I
your
mean,
game is dead before it's even hit 1.0?
yeah, I've had that done to me personally,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean my game, you know, in the first week we made 9 sales,
Mm-hmm.
despite being covered by not a lot of YouTubers, but a few. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like I had somebody with like 300K subs, you know, stream the game. I had or make a video on the game. Had a few other people with, you know, some more subs. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that was the biggest sub number and didn't have a whole lot, but
Yep.
that smear campaign that was
Mm-hmm.
done on it, you know, really, you know, really hurt what little bit we had.
Mm-hmm.
And the you know, after the way it seems it goes is whatever you make in the first week determines what you make in the second week,
Mm-hmm.
and that determines on what you make in the third week because basically you make like maybe I think it's like something like 10% in the second week of what you make in the first week. So yeah, we sold 9 copies in the first week and 1 copy in the second week,
Yep.
0 copies in the third, 0 copies in the fourth, and I think it was like 2 months or 3 months later before we sold one more copy.
Speaking of which, it's time for another depressing look at Vision Soft Reset. Let's see how many reviews they're up to.
Oh yeah, that was an amazing game.
Still 9. They have not broken 10, and that game came out almost a year ago.
Hmm. I mean, we're only sitting at 14, I think, 14 with a 100% review score. But you have to get 10 to even get a review score, which is the reason why they still don't have a review score on there.
Mm-hmm. Vision Soft Reset. It's a game that we covered earlier this year.
Hmm.
And yeah, like if review bombs was kind of the trend, this past year or these past few years, like this whole thing about buying and trying to kill somebody's game. What do we call this? The game nuke,
Yeah,
nuclear option.
yeah. I mean, it's going to be worse than the DMCA on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
1,000 times worse,
Yeah.
million times worse.
And that's how we'll end this section with more depressing doom and gloom there.
What's going to be really bad is if France does get this passed,
Mm-hmm.
and then other countries see this bull crap and say, "Hey, let's all do the same thing."
Yeah.
And some of you would look at that and be like, "No, no, our countries would never do that." And
Mm-hmm.
others would look at that and be like, "Yeah, yeah, that is actually very likely to happen." And the second one would be correct. That is very likely to happen because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of countries copy each other's walls or take. That's the reason why when one person started doing loot box stuff, a lot of countries started doing loot box stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
they're all copying, changing, manipulating, and U.S. was the more recent one that made it way way worse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Belgium one, from what I've seen, the Belgium one looks really good, but the U.S. one, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's horrible.
And again, like getting back to the discussion about whether or not consumers will understand this, I checked the Vision Soft Reset forum right now, and one of the very first posts on there, somebody complained that the game was done in Unity Personal Edition because that affects how great a game is, what game engine they use.
Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, several people, or several people, several people that actually, said something on my game, attacked it for being RPG Maker. It's like, it's not RPG Maker. It is a custom engine, made out of libgdx, out of Java.
Mm-hmm.
It is not an RPG Maker, and an RPG Maker cannot really do tactical RPGs. I mean, you could technically make a first-person shooter in it, but you'd have to do like so much work to it, just
Mm-hmm.
like you would have to do so much work to do a tactical RPG, or pretty much anything that is not a copy and paste, RPG, which is the reason why generally those games aren't any good because most of them are copy and paste. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we have seen a few good examples of RPG Maker games that were like
Mm-hmm.
what was those? I'm slipping on their
The
names. Like
world
there's
is
that
your
one where you
weapon.
could use any kind
Yeah,
of thing as an item. What was that one?
the world is your weapon, I think,
Yeah,
or
I
something
mean,
along those lines.
I wouldn't say that's a great game or anything, but that's definitely
A
like for
step
RPG Maker,
above. Yeah.
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then there was that horror one that we looked at, the one
Oh.
that you said was fair and being unfair.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fear and hunger.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make a good game in RPG Maker, but it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to make something that is good that is not
Mm-hmm.
just copy and paste basically.
Yeah.
And the thing is if you're not going to do basically copy and paste, if you're going to go the next step farther, it's pretty much easier to make it in that same exact game in any other engine
Yeah.
because RPG Maker isn't really built to be fooled with and do something besides
Mm-hmm.
the copy and paste. And where other engines are built to be customized and do whatever kind of game you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
But people will downgrade your game based on the engine,
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't even know what engine it is. They
Yep.
will still downgrade your game because they'll say it's this engine, and it doesn't matter because they said it. Therefore it's on the internet. Therefore it must be true.
Mm-hmm. All right,
By the
but
way, did you hear that Ninja did blank? And he's a horrible person for doing it.
okay, good to know.
It's on the internet now. Nobody can deny that he did blank.
Mm-hmm. All right, but I think with that, let's see what weird games are coming out. See if we can at least have some happiness on the stream here. All right, let's see what we got.
A whole bunch of Area 51, I'm sure.
I think that was last week. I think this week it's going to be cat-based games. We'll see. What the heck?
I don't know. I
Oh,
mean, Area 51 just went off the other day.
Applewood is a fruit-centric, nutrient-rich imping game? What the hell is an imping game?
What is the imping game?
I don't know. What?
Is
Hats.
that because your character is an imp and it's an imping game?
Is this a Metroidvania? Thank you. At least he said no. I'll give him a points for that one. Is it? Oh, it's not an indie tag or indie genre.
Uh-oh. Nobody's going to be able to find that game.
Mm-mm.
Anybody searching indie genre that isn't a genre won't be able to find it.
You know what? I'm going to ask for it. Maybe I'll look at it for the indie spotlight if we get a key.
Yeah. Could be interesting.
Alright, let's see. Let me just make sure that I actually saved it. Dino Zoo Transport Simulator. Snow Clearing Driving Simulator. These simulators are getting very specific these days.
Yeah, we need a game dev podcast simulator.
There we go. That could be your next game. You could
Oh.
corner the market.
I just have to get the the legal rights from you for repost the streams.
What the heck is this? Is a platforming endless runner with procedurally generated platforms. That's just what a runner is.
Yeah.
What the heck is the model? Okay. Well, that's something. Graduated. Is it a visual novel? Yes, I think. Learn languages and view. Oh, jeez. Where's Draken? I think we may have summoned him with this.
Uh-oh.
Mm.
You got a mirror?
No, I got something better. A visual novel dating simulator.
Uh-oh. You hear that, Draken?
Oh, God.
He still wants you to play the KFC game. I think a lot of people want you to play the KFC game because we're mainly probably interested in what kind of crap show that could be.
Oh, God. You know is going to just every damn YouTuber is going to play this game, right?
Absolutely. Every YouTuber is going to play that game. And that is what KFC is counting on.
Mm-hmm.
And they want all the chicken sales from people from all of YouTube playing this game. And their sales are going to skyrocket.
I just got like a punch in my soul looking at this.
Yeah.
What the hell?
And you know what's bad is the more bad the game is, the more sales they'll get.
Uh-huh.
Because the more bad they're going to get, the more bad it is, or the more memey it is, the more YouTubers are going to cover it, and the longer it's going to last, and the longer KFC is going to get, free promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And the more chicken they're going to sell.
Maybe we'll save this for horror month. Oh, don't say that, Ken. When is Wendy making a game? Oh, God. What about the KFC Wendy's crossover game? I think my eyes are going to start twitching.
With all the Wendy memes and the Twitter stuff, I mean, they might actually be able to make a good game out of that. But
what the hell is this? Wait, is this an ARPG or a tower defense? or it's like a MOBA. Ugh.
What's the tag say? It says no. That's a. It says RPG strategy, action adventure.
And indie
So
genre.
yeah, it's the all important indie game genre.
Spellcaster University. Huh.
You know what would be funny is if you look through here and you looked at AAA games and they all have the indie genre.
That would be a. I don't know. Like, trying to think, like, would that be like kind of like the universe like breaking on it, like folding in on itself right there?
No, that would just be AAA being AAA.
Mm. Oh, I got it, Ken. The Wendy's game will be a Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff right there.
Oh,
Oh,
oh no,
see,
no, 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 no! What they need to do for the Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff is the McDonald's games. They got Grimace and the
oh, yeah. And
Hamburger and
Ronald McDonald.
yeah, yeah, a Ronald McDonald Five Nights at Freddy's.
Mm. You do realize we are going to get that game now, right? Because somebody.
Yes, yes. Somebody's going to make that game now.
Hmm.
Somebody's going to see this podcast and make that game. And make sure you credit Sharky,
Mm-hmm.
of Nexus Games when you do.
Yeah.
I don't care if you give me any money or anything. Just credit me. Just put me in the credits and send me a copy.
This actually doesn't look too bad. Management sim where you're building a wizard school. Hmm. I'm gonna, I'm gonna take a shot here. See if we get that one. Huh. 2 games this week that actually look interesting. It's a rare occurrence.
Hey, there's Draken.
Yeah, I
You
told you.
summoned him.
Told you that's how it works. 3D visual novel maker. No, we're not clicking on that.
But you don't want to make visual novels?
I'm sure the audience has some plans for that one. Oh, the new Contra
The
game.
fanfics.
Hmm. They're now, excuse me, they're now doing this now. I can get affiliate links. I don't know. It seems kind of weird to me about putting affiliate links in the videos to earn money like that.
Mm, yeah.
I mean, the key I'll definitely look into. I mean, it's Contra. Hope it's online multiplayer.
The screenshots I'm looking at doesn't look too appealing.
Yeah. What the
Doesn't
hell?
seem like Contra.
Wait. What the hell am I looking at here?
That's what I'm wondering. It's like it doesn't look like or feel like Contra or anything.
Hmm. I could play a Blazing Chrome 4 more times in a row. Nota?
It seems more like just a completely different game with the Contra name
Why
plastered on
is...
top of it.
I think El Goro told me about this one. Because this is looking very familiar in terms of like physics and...
That's an interesting style to it.
And at some point you go play Undermine again. Oh, good. And now Dragon's creating the whole fiction or lore around the Wendy's dating sim game. You could probably buy
Yeah.
that 3D visual novel game. He could make that game.
Yeah.
What is... Power Rangers? Wait, this is the fighting game I keep hearing people talk about.
Oh, I remember the old Power Rangers fighting game. That thing was not good.
No, it was not. Chernobyl, the Untold Story. Ooh. I see, man. Okay. Oh, the King of Synthwave. What the? Well, that's a turn for the graphics. And there's
What?
Cat Quest. Cemetery Warrior 2? That does not look like a cemetery to me.
That's part 4, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
They left the cemetery in part 2.
What the hell? 5? What? Apparently there's lore to this game that I don't think anyone here knows.
But yeah, I mean, you got to play the first three first.
Mm-hmm. I bet we could do that over a month, right?
Yeah, you could do it over an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Just skip lunch.
Wait. Oh yeah, that game. The brutal, you're playing the executioner. It's still not out yet.
Hmm.
Moose Anti-Poo Adventure. What the? Oh, and it's an indie game. If you didn't figure that one out.
Oh snap! I've never seen a game in this genre before.
I bet Mojo's gonna buy this one.
Probably.
You know, he loves the Binding of Isaac.
Yeah. He loves the poop monsters. The
Broken.
legendary gun.
Visual novel. Okay, weapon simulation.
You know, it says a legendary gun, but then you look at the first screenshot
It's just
and
a
it is a
pistol.
generic basic pistol.
This
I
is a.
suspected something legendary. I declare false advertising.
Mm-hmm. Make a YouTube video about it.
Oh yeah, I'll make all the YouTube about it.
There you go.
At
Marshmallow
least
Man.
200 of them.
Putt Panic. I'm surprised I haven't seen too many cat-related games.
Marshmallow Madness sounded interesting.
Let's see.
Who knows if
Oh,
it is?
Hectic Brawler. That's another genre that a lot of indie developers have gone with. The Brawler. Let's see. I did get a key for Stygian. I think I'm embargoed until next week. Lovecraftian RPG. I mean, come on, that just is right there for me.
Yeah, could be interesting.
Mm-hmm. We need more Cthulhu, I think.
Just hope they don't have any stealth sections in there for you.
Yeah. This is the other game people were telling me about, right? Code Vein? Kind of like a Monster Hunter or Souls-like kind of game.
I think I played something from that same developer that I did not care for. I think, but I can't remember.
Hmm.
Who's the developer on that?
It's Bandai Namco. So I think they did that God Eater game.
Yeah,
Eh.
yeah, that's the one I'm referring to. I didn't care for God Eater.
Yeah, again, it felt like a lesser Monster Hunter to me. Night Furies. Or Night Furries, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Totally different things.
Yes.
Night Furies and Night Furies, totally different games.
Mm-hmm. Super Toy Cars. Chicks and Tricks. In VR.
What was that I seen above? Was that something about the Volta gun or whatever gun vault?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a DLC.
Alright. Two more pages, I think, and then we'll move on. Moria. There's that Nordlicht game that we played. Underscrewed. Another
Dice
Tropico?
Defenders.
Let's see. Oh,
Didn't Tropico 6 come out many years ago?
could have. Let's see. Oh, this must be the console version. Hmm.
Uh,
Spectating Simulator the Racing? Oh, you are spectating the cars. You're not even driving them.
just go watch the cars go around the track.
Yeah? I think you should do that for Project Try. Have a mode where you're just sitting there watching the other people play the game.
Yeah, spectator mode.
Yeah.
But just have like no playing mode.
Yeah.
Just everybody's watching.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an e-sport.
Lennon the Lion? What the? Oh no, I think this is a novel game. Yep.
There are no battles or levels.
Okay. Oh, I'm sure everyone would love for me to run that one on stream.
Hmm.
The Binding of You? What?
Well, you. This is another game you must play.
Does the guy's
Where
mouth be open on every screenshot?
it might be the only sprite they have.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, it's indie and casual. Mm,
Is it more casual or more indie?
I don't know. What is an independent game?
What is a rogue?
There you go. I think we may have to answer in both those in that one game. Truck the System. Mm. Project Dunk. Who is you? What the? What? Unusual storyline. That's always a good sign. These screenshots are making perfect sense, aren't they?
Oh yeah, total. And then it looks like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and then
It's in Russian.
yeah,
Okay. I think that's the game we'll end the Weird Game segment on there.
you gotta love it where you see the like plastic surgery with choosing a different mouth.
Mm-hmm. Alright. So for our final topic this week, we'll talk a little bit more about control schemes in games. And the reason why we picked this one from our list is the fact that I've been playing Monster Hunter World. And Monster Hunter is a franchise that its UI is, on one hand, so set and established after all the games, but it's still very hard to get into from a new player. But it's one of those cases where so many people have grown, they've adapted to it that they're not really going to change it. And as we said last week, control schemes and control conventions in game is one of those topics that a lot of people don't think about, but it's so pivotal to a game's success.
Absolutely.
And like when we talk about control schemes, again, we're referring to both when it comes to a gamepad or a keyboard, as well as the UI of the game. So I guess the first point, like, what makes it so difficult is that it's not something that I don't think any developer has, hit the control scheme perfectly on their first run at it when they're making their game.
I don't know. I mean, it depends. I think some might have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what did you think about our control scheme or our sets of control schemes that we had?
I thought it was alright, but again, like as you saw when I was playing, there were still like a few things that were kind of like I was having trouble with at the beginning.
It was more UI stuff rather than controls,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
So I guess there's a question for you, or for everyone as well. Do you think UI and control scheme design are the same, or are they separate categories?
I would say they're separate
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because UI is more layout of how things are organized and shortcuts and different menus and whatnot, and controls are more like which button. That's more of a physical interface. That's where
Mm-hmm.
your hands are going to be touching the keyboard or mouse or control pad or whatever it is, and you need to be it needs to be intuitive. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I would agree with that, and especially because of the fact that they are so different. Like with the UI, it's something that you're usually looking at an experience like that. When it comes to a control scheme, you're dealing with the physical constraints of whatever your peripheral is. And I think that usually takes its own unique set of challenges. Because we've played games where it feels like the developer just puts all the controls like just like haphazardly on the gamepad, and then it's just a nightmare to play. And as we said last time when we talked about this, one of the things that you absolutely must have, or I think what should be standard, is being able to remap controls.
I know when we started, our controls were absolutely crap in Chromasia, and we just it was whatever Monkey had assigned them to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. We need to swap this and this and this and this. And we swapped it several times. Um, and then just kept on getting feedback on what
Mm-hmm.
felt good and whatnot until we finally got in there.
Yeah.
But, we did so many, back to the UI thing. I mean, we did so many different things with our UI and everything, which I think UI and controls have a close relationship, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, one feeds into the other, and they feed back and forth.
Yeah. But it's different, I think, as you said, to get the UI right than to get the control scheme right.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and like to Deathly's point there about Super Meat Boy, again, like when you're trying to get the feel of your game right on a peripheral, like that takes a lot of time to do it right. And like this goes back to something that I was talking about like a few years ago, this idea of a primary action versus a secondary action. Like a primary action is kind of like your core gameplay loop. So if you're playing a first-person shooter, it's move, shoot, jump, stuff like that. While secondary actions are usually context sensitive. And you need to make sure that your primary actions are set up so they can be hit comfortably and that they can be done at any time.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like
And you would want to not only do it at any time, but in a more prevalent spot to do it.
yeah.
Like example I would say would be like if we're talking about like controller mapping, like
Mm-hmm.
on old RPGs, like Final Fantasy and such,
Yeah.
where the two buttons that are closest to your thumb, the bottom two, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be like the square and the X button. Those were often confirm and cancel.
Yeah.
But then you would have to go up and hit the upper button to go into your menu.
Mm-hmm. And to give you guys a case in point, I'm going to go back to full screen for a second. When I was playing Blasphemous, one of the things that I did was I adjusted the controls for dodging and parrying. I believe it was set up that L button was parry, and L trigger was parry, L button was the dodge. And my problem that I had with that was if you're watching my hands as I'm playing, that if I'm trying to repose, I can't necessarily immediately go to a dodge. I have to shift my finger. So what I did was I switched it so that L was dodge, right button was parry. And the reason why was that both those actions were considered primary, at least they were for me. So I want them to have their own button. And more importantly, like this is one of the things that I do. I use a secondary association to make it easier for me. The reason why I made left button the dodge was the fact that I'm using my left hand for movement. So it's easier for me to immediately realize I need to dodge. What hand am I using for movement? Left hand, left button. It works a lot easier for me. But I'm sure if somebody was right-handed, they may do the opposite. They may say that the right button is more for their primary hand.
Right.
But again, like that's something you have to think about. That if you have, let's say, 4 primary actions in your game, how I hold the controller or how my hands are on the keyboard have to be set up to easily hit those buttons. And if you don't do that, then your game becomes harder to play.
Yeah. And remember, making your game harder makes it better, right?
Oh, of course. And like again, like the one thing you never want to do is require the player to shift their hands. This is actually one of the common complaints a lot of people. I should just keep the gamepad in my hands at all time. A lot of people complain about in the Dark Souls series that it's better in many cases to shift your hand so that you are manipulating the camera and attacking at the same time, as opposed to using the lock-on feature, because it feels a lot easier to keep track of things like this. But the problem, though, is that when you're doing that for minutes or hours at a time, it puts a greater strain on your hand, and it begins to hurt when you're doing that. And that's the other major point. Again, take notes, developers watching this. Don't make a control scheme that hurts the person's hand to play it for long periods of time.
Exactly, and that's something you have to test. I mean, testing is so important, including for the controls.
Yep. And again, like, I don't think, as like, going back to again the distinguishing between UI and control schemes, that the control scheme, I think, is probably easier to strain out than the UI, because of the fact that you're dealing with the fact that we all only have two hands. You know, you don't have to design a UI or a control scheme for somebody with four hands, like Goro. But
yeah, I mean, controls there's a very set,
yeah,
kind of thing. But UI can vary based on the genre, anything you do special in it, anything you do different, and just small variances here and there can just massively affect it. Not to mention cosmetics.
Yep. Tooltips, dynamic UI, symbology, you name it, even the color is a major part of UI. I think that's why let's see if we can resist going too far into UI, because I think, again, that's its own topic, or 10 topics right there. But getting back to the control scheme, that this is one of the reasons why the controls of your game make controls are so we play. Oh, there we go, exactly. But this is why when we talk about control schemes, you do want to copy other people's games. You want to take notes what other people have done in the genre and use it for your own game. You do not want to be, the auteur of a control scheme. Right button is jump, left button is shoot, and the right analog stick is movement. You don't want to do that for your kind of game. You want your control scheme to be as easy to pick up and play as possible.
How about the left analog stick is your movement, right? And then you press up on your D-pad, and that's your jump. You press down on your D-pad, and that's interacting with the item. You put left on the D-pad, and that's strafing. You push right on it, and that's jumping.
Yeah.
Super hot.
Yeah. Or
and you don't use any of the other controls on the controller.
Or your keyboard has hotkeys set at left parenthesis, page up, F1, and then the shift key. That's the controls for your platformer on the keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the swapping the A and the B. And again, when we're talking about genres, the control scheme is not where you want to differentiate yourself with. If you're making a platformer and people are using a controller, you better make the A button the jump button, or you're going to have people just pissed off at you.
Yep.
And again, this is stuff this is pretty much like Design 100 that we're talking about right now. This is the bare minimum that you need to think about when you're building your game.
Yeah, that's actually the issue I had with the game that I played last week of Slain Back from Hell.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like a pretty dang good game, but the controls were horrible, and they could swap controls, but the swap there was only two control layouts on keyboard, and they were both horrible. Yeah. One was horrible using WSD, and the other one was horrible using the arrow keys.
Yeah, I remember now. And that's the other point. Having presets is not the same as remapping, because they're not the only developer who's done that. I've lost count, but there are other developers who they'll have 3 or 4 different preset control schemes, but you can't rebind any keys.
Mm-hmm.
And elaborating on that, again, it's important to point out that control remapping is not an excuse to do the work of control binding or sample control scheme yourself, because we've seen developers do that as well. They'll just put whatever the hell they want and say it's completely remappable. Do it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, with our last game, I mean, we did our best to get a control scheme, but we also had controller remapping.
Yeah.
And then it pains me every time somebody complains about the controls, which I do get every once in a while. I was like, well, it's understandable, but there is controller remapping, and they're like, there is. Where is it in the options? Oh, there's options. Yes, there's options.
Just like going back to the old days of having to read the manual.
Yeah, I seen somebody doing that on Epic Tavern the other day. Like, somebody was talking in their Discord, and they were like, they were looking for something, and then somebody replied. I think it was Tomo, and he's like, "It's in the menu. How do you get to the menu? Press the escape key."
Please tell me they didn't say was it escape.
Things in here. It's like, how did you not realize that? How did you not realize that there was a menu under the escape key? I mean, every game has that.
This is the old classic Simpsons episode, when Homer has to push the any key. There's no any key here.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And sadly, there's a lot of gamers like that. They don't know the any key. They don't know that escape opens up options. They don't know that every game has options.
Yeah.
That you can access those options inside the game. It's like, do we need to put in tutorials to press the escape key to bring up a menu?
That may happen at some point. Who knows?
I think I'm going to have to start doing that.
And remember, don't turn off your computer while the game is saving.
Oh, yeah. Need to put that on every screen.
And
actually, this was a streamer. This was a streamer that was streaming Epic Tavern. And probably won 20 plus years old, probably 30 plus. Couldn't figure out that escape key opens a menu.
I should just spend the rest of this topic in facepalm mode. Just be like this for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, and the thing is the developers, as developers, we have to address this, and and then like people complain about your hand holding, but then then you got people like this.
And Deathly Rage makes the very important point there. You can't assume anyone knows anything. And that is a very big point. It's what I talk about with onboarding. That every game is somebody's first. And this is why Nintendo goes to great lengths to making the beginning and the control scheme as easy as possible. Yes, we're all tired of press A to jump, use the left analog stick to move. But you also have to think, there's chances are somebody out there who has never played a Mario game or a platformer and may not know this stuff.
Yeah.
And again, like conversely, you can you sell the design around the first time experience. This is why it's important to look at genre conventions and UI conventions when you're designing your control scheme or anything. Because again, going back to the gamepad, how many first-person shooters use the right trigger to shoot? Every one of them, because that was considered the easiest and the most acceptable control, or the most acceptable button for that control scheme. So, like, going back to Shark's example, using down on the directional pad to shoot is just completely flying in the face of all of that, and you're intentionally making your game harder to learn. And this goes back to, in my book, I brought up the game Batman and Robin for the Super Nintendo. This was a 2D platformer / beat 'em up. And nobody back then could figure out how to play the game. And the reason was they used the select button for the grapple option. So you're having a jump tie-in to be your select button. How many other games use that? 0. So guess what? Nobody could figure out how to play the game because your control scheme was just completely against what everybody else was doing. And as Ken says, a space bar is 99% a jump button. You don't want to use numlock for jumping.
Exactly.
Now,
And I just, it really gets to me that you could have something as integral as the escape button opening up the menu
mm-hmm,
that people don't know about, but yet you can go to people that have
mm-hmm,
barely played any games. Like you could go to my mom, for example, and she could figure out very easily to put the escape button to open the menu because she doesn't really play any real games. I mean, she plays a couple of things on her mobile phone. She plays some card games that were invented. Like the actual game was released as a pack of games that was released like I think like probably 20 years ago. She's been
mm-hmm.
playing it for the last 20 years. The same thing, same pack of games. And that's basically all she plays. And she can very easily figure out that
Mm-hmm.
escape is the menu. And she has no experience in the escape being menu, really.
But wait, we've played indie games on stream for a lot of the spotlights where escape cancels the game or it completely shuts the game off.
Oh, yeah, there has been some of those.
Mm-hmm.
Really bad controls, and then you hit escape, and then that's like the end of the game.
Yeah. I just love, again, we're getting to safely extreme territories. Yes, you should follow genre conventions, but you should also be innovative and change things as well. We're getting a lot of mileage out of safely extreme.
Yeah, it's the best meme we ever came up with.
Yeah, we need to
The
coin that.
very safely extreme.
I should get a T-shirt printed up with that on there.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah, but again, like this has always been like that very weird thing, and I think going back to that example with Alien Resurrection, if you are going to change your control scheme in any way, shape, or form from what's conventional, you have to explain that in game. Don't don't just put that in a manual. Don't put that on a menu somewhere. If your control scheme is going to be different, you have to explain that in title or in the game space.
Yeah, and not only that, but you have to be sure that that makes sense and
Mm-hmm.
it's good for your specific game.
Yeah,
There's a reason for you to change it. The reason to not go with the convention.
yeah. And that actually takes me to a point that I want to bring up that I'm curious what everybody thinks about this. And that is the classic console versus PC control scheme when it comes to shooters. Because I've talked about this before. I think I made even some of my earlier videos about this. Like for me, I think the keyboard and mouse, or specifically the mouse peripheral, is superior for any kind of shooting or aiming on the player point. I cannot play a shooter with a gamepad. It just feels alien to me these days. But conversely, what was that?
I can't either.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a fan of shooters, but like I like games that have shooting mechanics in it, like Seven Days
Mm-hmm.
to Die, and like I just if I had to play 7 Days to Die on a controller,
Mm-hmm.
I would just be the most horrible person ever at that game. I just could never get the controls down. I
Mm-hmm.
could never play it that way. But with the keyboard and mouse, man, I could just snipe, kill everything, and just
Yeah.
destroy everything.
And that's what I was thinking about. But then, like on the other hand, if your game is movement based, whether it's a 2D platformer, 3D, whatever, I have to use a gamepad for that. Like I cannot play like anything like movement focus with a keyboard anymore. Like I know people who could play Super Meat Boy. I even watched them speedrun that game on keyboard and mouse or just keyboard. I can't do that. I need that analog stick. I need that, fidelity of controls when I'm moving around.
You talking about like a platformer?
Even like platformer, third person game, like anything where movement is a focus. Like I need to have a gamepad. Like even like the Dark Souls series. Like I couldn't even begin to imagine playing that for me on keyboard and mouse as opposed to using a gamepad.
I could play a
Yeah.
platformer with keyboard and mouse. I would prefer a controller though.
Yeah.
Um, RPGs, I could go either way.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
And but a racing game, I absolutely have to either have a steering wheel
Mm-hmm.
or a controller.
An analog stick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, like we've played a few 2D platformers. Let me see. Yeah. What was that game? A tower climber? It was like a brutal roguelike platformer that came out that did not have control mapping to begin with, and so you. Like, I think the thing for me is, again, I can't say it would be weird to take my webcam off, but when I'm using a keyboard and I have to use essentially three fingers for controlling the four directions, it's just easier for me to use my thumb and know that I can move in any direction like that. Like, it's just that little extra, mental tick that I think screws me up these days.
All right. Here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to play a platformer on keyboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather have it to be A and D to move back and forth, W to jump, and S to duck, or would you rather have A and D
Mm-hmm.
to move and space to jump?
I think for me, it's definitely space to jump. Like I said, like I want to keep my fingers in a way that each finger or each button has its own primary action. So I can just basically that just lets me compartmentalize the UI, so that I know when I don't even need to think anymore. I can just react knowing, oh, there's an objective or obstacle, spacebar, or a
Yeah,
thumb. Yeah,
yeah.
like I can't.
I can't play a platformer that uses the
W.
W as a jump.
Yeah, me neither. Again, this is the very weird thing about control schemes like this is that you're only dealing, at least when we talk about normally, 2 hands, 10 fingers. That gives you a very hard limit on what you can design. And this is why context sensitive buttons or controls come into play. Because you cannot have a button literally for every command. Unless, on a gamepad. Keyboard, how many keyboard or old school games had, D to open a door, G to grab an item, E to eat food, O to open the door. You have to grab the doorknob first and then you have to open the doorknob or open the door.
Oh, I remember those old ones.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. I know. Yep, and getting back to Deathly's point, mouse wheels. There was a time where mouse wheels were considered, the luxury option for your mouse.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta love it when a game puts like a main function as the mouse scroll wheel button, not the
Mm.
scroll in itself, but where you press down on the scroll
Oh,
wheel.
yes.
It's like to shoot your super attack, push down on the middle mouse. It's like, oh my god, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate those.
Mm-hmm. And, I was thinking about with Grim Dawn, for instance. Like, it's very weird. Like, this has screwed me up playing, like, ARPGs. Because with Grim Dawn, they said E and R for mana and health potions, respectively. So when I was playing Diablo 2 hardcore, I was pressing R several times saying, okay, I need to take this health potion. R, why isn't this working?
Yeah, because I think Path of Exile does it the same as Diablo
Mm-hmm.
with 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, Ken. Oh, that is screw. You guys don't know. Like when I switch genres, when we're doing like the grab action, when we have to switch between multiple games, it screws me up sometimes, having to kind of readjust. I always say with Binding of Isaac that because like going from like one game to another, like my timing and my sense of play is completely screwed up. It's also why I can't play Crypt of the Necrodancer and then go do something else.
yeah, it's all about the controls on
Mm-hmm.
that. You need to try to be the go standard as you can anyway.
Yeah. But again, don't be afraid to innovate if you can do something better. And I think
Exactly.
ultimately, I think when we say do something better, I think that usually corresponds to figuring out a way to do something with less buttons to it. Like again, this is why the analog stick was such a big deal. Instead of having to press 4 buttons, I just have one essentially analog nub or stick to do all that functionality with.
Or maybe not even less buttons, but less more intuitive
Mm-hmm.
because it's really annoying when you have like a button that does both. Like I think you ran into this problem with River City Girls, where you
Mm-hmm.
had a button that was attack, and it
Also,
was also go to the next screen or something.
or pick up something off the ground, that kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you brought that up because I was just about to mention that as kind of one of my final points. When you have multiple actions, you have to be careful to keep similar actions or those that are going to be like the same function or close to them on the same button. You mentioned this one I think many times in the past. The ever popular the jump button is the interact button. So you try to pull a switch, open up a door, and your character just like jumps up in the air instead.
And off a cliff.
Oh yeah, and like so many like open world or sandbox style games in the past have made it very hard to try and do like little minute actions. You just want to drop down off a ledge and say your character dive rolls off the edge and kills themselves.
Yeah.
The fun of going up and down ladders in many first person games is also a really good example of this. I have to look straight down, go to the edge but not too far off the edge, and then hopefully it catches it, or I just go walk right off the edge and kill myself.
Oh yeah. Like when I played 7 Days, I have that issue.
Mm-hmm.
When going up and down the ladders, like those things were notorious for breaking your legs for
Mm-hmm.
so many versions. They've tweaked it so much and got it
Mm-hmm.
so much better now that it's no longer notorious for breaking your legs. It's still not exactly
Mm-hmm.
amazing, but
Yeah.
it's not like a gamble with fate on death / broken legs every time you get on a ladder, and
Yeah.
ladders are almost required in that game.
Yeah. At least the nice thing you do in the Souls series is you have to press a button to climb ladders. So it just cuts out that issue entirely. Or some first person shooters, I know that if you go to the ladder, like automatically like, kind of like magnetizes you to the ladder, so you just go straight up or down.
Hmm.
But yeah, so many deaths from ladders, so many deaths from climbing down ledges. Oh my gosh, in like Assassin's Creed or any of those
Uh,
Saints Row.
oh, I remember the first Assassin's Creed where
Mm-hmm.
you would die from getting in the water.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have that in the second or any of the others, but like the first one where you would die getting in the water, and then they had those little like little pier posts out in the middle of the water, and you had to jump from one to another, and then they had
Oh
sort of a
no.
almost like a lock-on feature thing,
Yeah,
and you would be pointing straight at the pillar, jumping straight
and it'll
for it,
still
but it
jump.
would lock on to another direction, and you would just
Mm-hmm.
jump right into the water. It's like, oh my god, really?
That's always fun. It's
What?
like I'm gonna jump this way, and the guy jumps like the other complete opposite direction.
It's like I wasn't pointing that direction. Why are you jumping in that direction?
Yeah. Oh yes, diagonal stairs. Oh yeah, like from Castlevania. Remember that? You have to be
Oh,
walking but holding down to go down the stairs, or he'll just walk right off the edge and kill himself.
oh yeah, and if you're on the stairs
Hmm.
and you need to jump for some reason, you just land and go right through the stairs.
Oh yes, that's always fun. At least they don't. At least I think they don't let you get hit and you get knocked off the stairs. But if you get hit backwards onto the stairs, then you go flying off of it. You go flying down.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That was horrible.
Yeah. And I think I'm about out of topics to think about for control schemes. Again, if we go UI design, we'll be here till like 12 o'clock tonight. But anything control scheme related that you want to bring up, Shark?
Um, hmm. I, something we did with our game was that we set it up to where the default control scheme was actually three control schemes all in one,
Mm-hmm.
because we set it up to where you could, play it with keyboard and mouse at the same time as you could play it with mouse only,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time you could play it with keyboard only without ever touching the controls. And then we had the full mapping and everything, but we had three different options. Not to mention the option when you put a controller on there and it would do a control layout for
Mm-hmm.
you, and then there was remapping on top of that. But I think that if you can make if a game is able to be made to be controller only or keyboard only, I think, and you'll legitimately graft all three schemes on there at the same time, the keyboard only, the mouse only, and the controller and the keyboard and mouse. I think that would be a good thing. I mean, that's what we did.
Motion wants to know about the little addition to your shark icon there.
The hat wear.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, we had some we were talking conspiracy theories and whatnot during
Did you do
the whole
the
first
Naruto
segment.
run? Was that you on the news there, Shark, doing the Naruto run across Area 51?
No, that was not me. That was not me.
But I think
A
my
different kind of conspiracies.
But yeah, I think one last point, and then I want to wrap it up here. While the UI and the control scheme are usually separate, like we said, they can work together in different ways. And the example that I want to think about was StarCraft. One thing they did was, if you remember the UI, you had the kind of like the 8 buttons, right? And maybe it was 12 different commands in the bottom right hand corner. And what they did was very simply say, okay, the top left one, we just tie it to the keyboard. So QWERASDF is all those commands right there. And you always, if you can, always have secondary associations to your control schemes, because it allows people to easily or easier to associate these commands to something, and thereby make it a lot. It basically cuts down the learning curve. And again, that goes back to the right trigger being used to fire. Because, you know what pulling a trigger is like? Well, firing a gun. And being able to, again, tie these things together, it sounds very simple, but it goes such a long way towards making a control scheme easier to process.
Yeah, I think in your game you should also have multiple ways to do the same thing if
Mm-hmm.
possible.
Yeah.
Like, for example, scrolling the screen on a game that more static, like an tactical
Mm-hmm.
RPG kind of thing. Like, it would make sense that not only is there a button to shift
Mm-hmm.
it, you can shift it with maybe the arrow keys or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, maybe moving your mouse cursor over to the edge of the screen moves your screen, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe on top of that you can do a few other methods to
Yeah.
move your screen, and like multiple controls for the same thing.
What? Yeah. Another big one is in a lot of isometric games, holding down the mouse wheel to kind of turn the camera, or just pressing like Q and E is another big one. Or yeah, and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
you
you
have the option.
yeah, and just like you said, I can move the mouse cursor to the edge to move the screen. I can use WSAD. I could use the arrow keys, and
Hmm.
yeah, and I think that's a really good point there that you made. Like, don't be afraid to have redundant controls, because somebody may find something easier. Again, for me, like I am trained at this point when I'm playing an isometric game to use WSAD for movement, but maybe somebody else prefers the arrow keys. And again, don't be afraid to give people a lot of options. But still, again, you have to think about how somebody's going to approach controlling your game.
Exactly, and you want to lay out your control scheme, and you don't want the two control schemes to interfere with each other.
Yes. Don't have WSAD for camera controls and then TFGH as well.
Yeah, you want to you also don't want to set, WASD for your movement, and
Mm-hmm.
then also have like in another, set where D is using an item.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, like this was one of the issues I was kind of running into Cat Quest, where you can switch between two different characters, and the controls for it feel a little bit awkward. And when I do my first look on it this week, I'll go into more detail then. But I think this is probably a good point to wrap it up for our discussion. I think we had a really great one for this. I didn't think we were getting into this much detail.
Yeah, I didn't think we were either.
Yeah.
I did think we were going to spend a little bit more time on the France one, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we got again. We talked about key reselling beforehand, and
yeah,
like there's
yeah,
only so much we can talk about until these things go into practice.
exactly.
All right. But I think with that, we are going to end things for this week. Shark, as always, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you, and I'm sure we'll be having another discussion next week.
Yeah, and maybe next week we can do UI design and another topic.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll kind of continue this discussion forward
Yeah.
from this one.
For people who are new, be sure to check out our Discord and Patreon link down below. You can find me on Twitter at GWBicer. And for you, Shark, if people want to find Project Nexus, what is your Twitter?
Well, we have Nexus Games LLC or INC, if I can get it right. INC, the number one on Twitter. And if you want our Discord link, you can join Josh's Discord. Send me a private message, Sharky, and I'll get you a invite for the Nexus Discord.
Mm-hmm. All right. And for those of you watching this live, tune in later tonight. We'll probably be doing the Link's Awakening remake, and we'll be back next Sunday around 3:34 p.m. EST for another live talk. So, guys.
And I'll probably be there telling you to get good.
Mm-hmm. Be sure to come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and we will talk to you later. Take care.